Are young men really a danger to society? In today's video, I'll discuss my perspective on the topic. Let's get started. We'll pick up where we left off last time. If you haven't checked that video out, please do so using the description in the link below. Our two experts, Logan and Scott, discuss the men's loneliness epidemic further, focusing on male role models and dating. Let's see what pearls of wisdom they have for us today.
Right? What do you do? And I think that we need a societal zeitgeist that says immediately, if there's no longer a male involved, we have to get other men involved and acknowledge that that's not being sexist, that's important that you get men involved. And I think, so I came from a single parent household, raised by a single immigrant mother who lived and died as secretary, light of my life. As soon as my dad was gone and then he had to move away for work, she got other men involved in my life. And I had wonderful men involved in my life. I had a stockbroker. Neighbor down the hall came in with his girlfriend and said, "Do you want to go horseback riding? You take me horseback riding." I don't know if men would be comfortable doing that in today's age. So
My question to Scott is, how does he plan to make this happen? There is a large chunk of men that are currently tuned out of society for how they feel they're currently being treated. Do you really think they're going to jump at the idea of raising a child, even partially, that isn't their own? I can safely say that that isn't happening. Then you have another group of men who are working 2 to 3 jobs to keep themselves and their family afloat. They don't have the time nor the energy to focus on someone else's kids. You also have a small group of highly successful men who might be great candidates for this, except they too are spending 100+ hours a week on their own endeavors. As I said in the last video, where is the incentive for men to do this? Historically, societal preservation would have been a sufficient reason for men to make this sacrifice. However, that doesn't hold value today when that same society treats these men as worthless. That's at best, if not right with outright contempt for every single thing that they do.
10%.
Yeah. Or in marriages, the top marriages today are the best marriages of all time, yet we have declining marriage rates. So we're nearing the lowest rate of marriage that we've ever had in American history. So most people or fewer people are getting married, but if you're, 2 college graduates who get married in your 30s, you might have an even stronger bond than people in the past. But that is a small group at the top.
Marriage has become a luxury item.
Yeah.
If you're in the top quintile of income earning households, you're 75% get married. If you're in the bottom quintile, only 25. If you're in the lower quintile of income earning men, only 1 in 4 chance of getting married.
And this has huge impact on our society because we know that married people are healthier, they're wealthier, they live longer. When couples are married, they actually have lower rates of child poverty. And so this has huge implications for our society if we're having fewer marriages.
The reason that there's less marriages is simple mathematics. Women have significantly increased their education and financial status. While they're free to do so, they continue to search for men who are at least as successful, if not higher. As men rightfully see less value for them in academic education, they're opting for alternative career paths. As a result, the pool of available men that meet these women's most basic expectations has shrunk significantly, while the number of women wanting those men, it's exploded. If women don't lower their expectations to include some of these more average men, then the math says only a small number will get married. Those top-tier men, they can also be choosy, picking the women that they find most desirable. It's only logical that these marriages will be successful. The man can provide a comfortable lifestyle for the woman, and he gains exclusive access to that same woman for sex and children. For everyone else, the story is quite different. The women who can't lock down a top tier man, but still try to, either have to lower their standards to get married, or they're going to remain single for the rest of their lives. As far as marriage being healthier, that applies when both sides are happy in the marriage. If the woman has to lower her standards to get a man, even if that man is on her level, is it truly going to be a happy marriage? Is she going to look at him as a provider or just as someone that she had to settle for because her dream man wasn't interested? Do you think she will treat that man with respect and see him as her equal? Absolutely not. She is going to look at him with contempt and hostility. He is everything that she does not want in a man, and trust me, she will ensure that he knows it. Does that sound like a marriage that promotes healthy mental health for a man? I don't think so.
One of the things that really shocked me as I was preparing for this conversation was this graph, because this isn't the narrative that we hear. Can you both see this one? This is the reverse gender gap.
Oh, yeah.
Gender pay gap graph.
Right.
And it shows that young women are now out-earning young men. That's not what I heard. In terms of, like, if I log onto social media, we've been trying to fight the gender pay gap. But to see that young men are now falling behind, both in education, both in unemployment. Young men face higher unemployment, nearly twice the rate of women. Looking at the early developmental stats, this graph was horrifying. I actually couldn't believe that was true, that young boys are struggling so much in education. But then to see also that it's reflected in...
So that graph shows that boys aged 16 to 24 are making 10% less in full-time employment than women. And so it is true that we're seeing a reverse income graph. But what we do need to talk about is even when women make more in their 20s, that changes around age 30.
And they have kids.
When they have kids, right? It's like this meteorite hits and there's this huge burden placed on women.
Note how she dismisses the evidence that young women are doing better financially than young men. If the gender pay gap at this age group has reversed to negatively affect men, or at best is even, why is that narrative still being pushed? There can never be enough equality for some people. There will always be some aspect of life where a woman is lesser than a man. In these people's minds, these inequalities must be eliminated, no matter how minor they really are. Also, let's talk about this burden that Logan brings up. She states that women have to do all the household chores, raise the kids, and still maintain employment. Traditionally, women maintained the home and cared for the children. The husband, he maintained the financial obligations by going to work. Both of those roles are critical, but they do focus on different tasks. When both the man and the woman worked equally hard at their assigned roles, the family dynamic succeeded. If a woman is a single mother, that changes the whole equation. Now, she is doing the work of two people, which simply doesn't compute. Of course, she's going to be stressed, exhausted, and burnt out because it just can't be done effectively. It's the same for single dads, albeit that there are far fewer of them. If the woman is a single mother because she is a widow or she was the victim of SA, then she deserves empathy and understanding for her situation. In many cases, however, the child was conceived out of wedlock, or the woman initiated divorce for less than ideal reasons. In these situations, she contributed to the problem. How much vetting did she do before having a kid with the guy? Did she recognize his red flags and ignore them? Society has no problem shaming men for their philanderous behavior. The same thing should also apply to women. Asking for that equal treatment, however, is often met with accusations of misogyny or sexism.
Now you said that women feel the need to then also earn a career and all those things. Where did that come from?
Well, there's this idea of hypergamy. So traditionally, women seek partners who have more economic or social status than they do. And for most of human history, this worked because men had the resources. And so there was sort of this arrangement where women could often marry someone who is more educated or earned more. But over the last 50 years, that's really changed. And so what I'm seeing in my work, working one-on-one with women, is that when they say that there aren't enough good guys to go around, that's actually true. So we now have this huge mating gap where we have these high-performing, high-earning women that have done the work and gone to therapy and work out, and they're ready for their great partner, but they're not able to find enough guys who are available.
Logan makes a rare concession in acknowledging that for most of history, hypergamy has worked well for women. They marry a top-tier man, and they gain access to his resources in return for their youth and beauty. But that wasn't enough. Feminism stepped in and sold women a lie. It preached that they could reach the same level of social and career success that men had on their own, while still being able to attract a man of an equal or even higher level. Although there is always the rare unicorn to pull this off, in general, that's far from accurate. Most career-oriented women fail to understand that their business accomplishments mean absolutely nothing to a man. They don't care that she's a CEO, or that she makes six figures, or that she is a boss babe. Feminism tricked women into thinking that because they liked these characteristics in a man, that the reverse was also the case. Newsflash, it isn't. Men are attracted to physically beautiful, peaceful, and supportive women. That's just reality. They can shame men till the end of the world, but it won't change that fact. Men are not going to push themselves to be successful just to attract a highly paid career woman that lacks these characteristics. It just won't happen.
Because these women are saying, okay, if you cannot be the provider, then you need to be offering more. Emotional intelligence is the new currency in dating. But these guys were raised not to be emotionally intelligent, not to give emotional support, but to be a provider. And so they've been chasing this lion. I'm going to hunt for this lion of being a provider. But suddenly they're told you need to hunt for a tiger, which is emotional intelligence. They don't have the skills to do that.
I am so damn tired of this emotional intelligence argument. Logan states that EI is the new dating currency. But does she even understand what it means? I went looking for a definition, and I found the following. This term was emotional intelligence, was coined in 1990, and it was described as a form of social intelligence that involves the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings and emotions, to discriminate amongst them, and to use this information to guide one's thinking and actions. The TLDR is to use your own and others' emotions to guide your path forward. That seems pretty simple, right? Not in the eyes of women. Just because men don't show their emotions or don't react spontaneously to them doesn't mean that they lack emotional intelligence. Often, a man's decision to intentionally ignore fleeting emotions is the better choice. So many women go off the rails when a man can just tune out their emotional outburst. When he can't be baited into a rash response, he retains significant control over the situation. Deciding that a given time is not appropriate for expressing certain emotions is critical to a man's success. This is exactly what emotional intelligence, at least by its definition, should be describing. But rarely is that what a woman wants to see in a romantic partner. Additionally, there are endless stories of women taking the emotional vulnerability of men when they open up about different things that they are experiencing and using that information to shame and otherwise harm the man in the future. Why would a man ever consider showing any sort of vulnerability emotionally with a woman if he knows that there is a very high chance she's going to turn around and use it to blackmail him in the future?
Yeah, there's a lot there. There's some nuance around the pay thing. So the data I've seen is that women under the age of 30 in urban areas are now making more money. But to your point, the moment they have kids, where corporate America has really failed is it hasn't figured out a way to maintain a woman's professional trajectory once she decides to deploy her ovaries and have kids. And there's some data saying, okay, 2/3 of divorce can be reverse engineered to the man starting to make less money. When the woman in the relationship starts making more money, they become twice as likely to get divorced, 3 times as likely to use ED drugs because the guy loses a sense of purpose and self-esteem. What gets lost in that data is the reality is if a woman is stepping up and stepping into the economic void and being more economically, being a greater economic contributor, then logically it would make sense that men need to step up logistically. And I think what a lot of women are saying is like, okay, I'm not getting anything. You're no longer a provider. And by the way, you haven't filled that void. You haven't made up the delta.
This is exactly what happens when women are told that they can have it all. They want to have the same career opportunities as men, make the same money as men. That, however, is not enough. They also want extended time off to have kids and not have it impact their career path whatsoever, while also having their husbands provide them full emotional support. What are they willing to give up to get this? Having a successful career involves a significant time and energy investment. Yet, they also want significant time to raise their kids. Women can't have it both ways. Even if her husband became a stay-at-home dad, he would raise the kids while she continues to put in hours at work. If she spends more time at home, she neglects her career responsibilities. She's expecting her employer, her husband, or both to sacrifice for her goals. Yet these same women appear unwilling to make any sacrifice on their end. The math, it doesn't math unless everyone bends over backwards to accommodate her and her goals and her needs above all else.
And so I think we really have this exacerbated problem where so many women are competing for the same men, and then a bunch of guys are getting ignored. And then what ends up happening is, where do those guys go? And they go online. That's what you see.
They go to porn.
They go to porn, or they go to Reddit. I mean, I love Reddit, but they're really going to some of these red-pilled communities. And so what you're seeing now is just men really opting out of society. So when you go back to that stat, 1 in 7 young men in the UK is NEET, not an employment, education, or training. They have just opted out. And as Scott says, there's nothing scarier than a single man, a young single man. And so we are just creating a lot of these angry young single men who are saying, well, this is rigged against me. And so that's why I am worried.
There is nothing scarier than a single young man. Scott, why would you say that? At face value, he's talking about single young men being violent towards one another. Every time something bad involving them happens, it's all over the news. But I see this statement as something very different. I don't think Scott cares if these men hurt themselves or others. In his introduction, he stated that his prior career was in business finance. This means he cares about men's lives insofar as what they can provide to companies. I previously mentioned that organizations generally only care about men when it negatively affects their profits. With the women's empowerment movement, they are taking over many roles previously held by men. But there continue to be some that remain unfilled. Women traditionally want cushy desk jobs. Those requiring hard physical labor, such as blue-collar work, they're rarely of interest to them. The dangerous portion comes in that single young men are very hard for corporations and government to control. Without a wife and kids, usually, they're motivated strictly by their own desires. They don't see the value in working leftover jobs that are either extremely stressful, have low pay, or both. Since they only have themselves to care for, they are perfectly content to work just enough to meet their own expenses, which are often quite low. Many single men are satisfied to have a roof over their head and some small creature comforts. They don't need much else. With this in mind, corporations and government have quite the vested interest in locking men into relationships, marriages, and kids. However, they really don't give a crap if these men are happy in their relationship, just as long as they have to work as much as possible to maintain that very high lifestyle for their wife and their kids.
Scott's point as well about they will date one of the men in the top 10%.
Yeah.
Sleep with him potentially, and then that kind of adjusts their standards and they expect all other men to meet that standard, but there isn't enough men to meet that standard, is there?
I haven't specifically heard that. I mean, there is a lot of evidence around assortive mating that people sort of have an internal sense of how attractive they are and that they end up with someone similar to that. But assortive mating is different than hypergamy, which is really this idea, as Scott said, that women tend to date horizontally and up and men date horizontally and down.
I'll give the host credit as he asked Logan the right question. However, she dodged that as fast as she could. Of course, she's heard plenty about this. That isn't even an issue of mating, but of general human psychology. Once you've experienced something great, do you really want to go back to just something average? Years back, I tried sushi for the first time at a top-tier restaurant. The ingredients, the presentation, the ambiance, it was all designed to make the experience memorable. It was, but it also came at a high cost, aka money. After that, any regular sushi I ate just couldn't compare. It was plain, boring, and just pedestrian. It's the same thing with women. As humans, Logan says we have an idea of what our natural level is in a partner. We identify with someone who is supposed to be even to us. That mechanism has been broken by social media and dating apps. After a woman experiences a top-tier man, they're ruined. Nobody average can meet that internal expectation that they now have for themselves. Normal men are just too poor, too ugly, or too boring to spend time with. This is in spite of both being average. Then, when average men approach these average women, and they get repeatedly rejected time and time again, they are completely cut out of the dating market. Unless, of course, those same men significantly drop their expectations. However, the women, they rarely do. And as far as most of society, they support the fact that those women will not drop their expectations.
Again, you can't tell women to lower their expectations, but this is the reality. When you ask a man, if you could have a woman who had 80% of everything you wanted, 75% say, yeah, I'm on board. Mm-hmm. When you say to a woman, a man has 80% of what you want, 75% say that's not enough. But if you, but even look at the media.
Right.
What does the media tell a woman to do? He's out, but he didn't open your door. He's not nice to his parent. You'd walk right out on that man. Like it's literally every piece of media is you don't need him. You're a strong, independent woman. Pull the ripcord. You're out. And it is the basic kind of communication around this is you are a strong, independent, powerful woman. That is wonderful. And quite frankly, you don't need the imperfect man. And they're just not connecting. I read.
Women don't want an imperfect man. Men will happily accept a woman that meets only 80% of their expectations. Most women won't accept a man that only hits 80% of their expectations. What does that tell you? Scott, how can you quote this survey result and then still put the blame on men? Then he says they're not connecting when talking about men and women. Do you need a neon sign to understand why? If 75% of women won't date a man who meets 80% of their qualifications, that means that the overwhelming majority of women don't just want a man that is slightly better than them. They want a man who is significantly better than them. This is like a woman with average looks, say a 5, wanting a man with extremely good looks, a 9 or a 10, and then wondering why he doesn't give her the time of day. This isn't hard to figure out.
I read that on Tinder, a man of average attractiveness has to swipe right 200 times to get one coffee, and then 4 of those 5 coffees will ghost him. They will decide they don't want to meet him or they won't show up. That means a guy of average attractiveness has to swipe right 1,000 times to get one coffee. Now, what does that tell that guy? Women don't value me. Women make me feel rejected. And then they go online and they see these misogynists telling them it's not your fault. And these men become much more prone to misogynistic content, much more prone to nationalistic content, blaming other people for the lack of economic opportunity. They start sequestering from society.
I wonder why they sequester themselves from society. Scott, you literally just said that a man of average attractiveness has to swipe 1,000 times just to get a single coffee date. That doesn't even guarantee that the man is attracted to her. That doesn't guarantee that she's attracted to him. It doesn't guarantee a second date or a third or anything else whatsoever. In many men's eyes, it's 1,000 swipes just to be rejected again, except in person. Being that most dating apps limit the number of available swipes per day, even reaching 1,000 swipes could take several days, several weeks, or even longer. And then you say that anyone who tells the man it's not his fault is a misogynist? How the hell do you react that way? Just work out more, bro. Just make more money. Just dress nicer. And then the ladies will only require you to swipe 500 times to get a coffee date. What a joke of a response to a supposed supporter of men's rights. Yes, young men, and more specifically all men, should improve themselves daily. But do it for women? Certainly not the ones found online. My gosh, with those kind of standards, they're not worth anyone's time or effort. Let's summarize the last 20 minutes of this discussion. Both Logan and Scott acknowledge that women continue to practice hypergamy, wanting relationships with men in higher social and financial statuses than they already are. However, those same women are also climbing the social and economic ladders, meaning that there are fewer men available to meet these expectations. Additionally, they've added the requirement that men must meet their emotional needs. However, they are less inclined, if at all, to reciprocate that behavior back. I think that pretty much covers it. I'll ask the same question that I asked at the end of the last video. What about what men want? Does that even matter? Apparently not. Perhaps it will come up in the next 20 minutes of the video, although at the rate it's going, being that we're 40 minutes in and really seeing not a lick of any discussion about men's needs or desires, I'm really beginning to doubt that it ever will show up. But, as always, we shall see. If you like what I'm doing here, please subscribe so you can see the next episode when I do upload it. As always, like, share this information with somebody else if they'd be interested in watching it. And I will see you all in the next video. Take care.